Hello and welcome to Workers' Comp Unwrapped, the podcast that simplifies workers' compensation for physicians. So, let's get started. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 14 of Workers' Comp Unwrapped with Anique, your host, and Angela, our expert, who has 15 years of experience in the industry. Today, we are talking about navigating OSHA compliance for medical practices and workers' comp, which is exploring OSHA compliance requirements for providers handling workplace injuries. So when you hear OSHA, right, the picture that jumps to mind is usually, hard hats, maybe safety vests, construction sites.
Exactly. Heavy machinery, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely not like a clean, sterile doctor's office or a PT clinic. But this is the key bit. If you're a medical provider who treats injured workers, well, suddenly all those OSHA rules, the ones designed for those industrial places, they apply directly to your practice.
That's it, exactly. It's a really, really common blind spot. Providers often get this kind of tunnel vision. They're so focused on the admin stuff.
It's billing codes.
Right, billing, state treatment guidelines, utilization review, all that. And they completely miss the fact that OSHA standards actually govern their own staff's safety, workplace exposures within the clinic, and even the paperwork they give back to the employer.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the link. OSHA's main goal, fundamentally, is workplace safety, period. But where does the medical provider, the doctor, the NP, the physical therapist fit into that whole chain? How do they go from just treating someone to being, part of OSHA's world?
Well, they fit in really in two major ways. The first one is what we could call their role as care providers.
Okay.
So every time they write up a medical report for a workplace injury, that information isn't just for the patient's chart or for billing. It feeds directly into the employer's official injury logs.
The OSHA logs.
Yep, specifically the OSHA Form 300 and the 301.
Hold on, let's just quickly define those for everyone listening.
Yeah.
What are Form 300 and 301, basically?
Yeah, good point. They're the official logs employers have to keep by law. They track every single recordable injury or illness that happens in their workplace.
Gotcha, recordable.
Right. And if the medical documentation that you, the provider, writes is, let's say, vague about what caused the injury or what the work restrictions are or even how severe it is, well, then the employer really struggles to figure out if it's recordable and meet their obligations.
Wow.
So your precision, right there in the clinic notes, it literally helps or hurts the employer's compliance status with OSHA.
So if I dash off a quick sloppy note, I'm not just maybe creating a billing issue down the line, I could actually be causing a compliance problem for the employer I'm supposed to be helping. Okay, that tracks.
Absolutely. That's the first role. The second way, and honestly, this is often where more risk lies for the clinic itself, is their role as employer.
Right, because the clinic is a workplace.
Exactly. Your medical practice, doesn't matter if it's a huge orthopedic center or just a small two-person PT office, it is a workplace. And so it's completely subject to OSHA rules for its own staff's safety.
Oh.
This is where we get into things like internal compliance, how you handle sharps, storing chemicals safely, bloodborne pathogens plans, and importantly, documenting injuries that happen to your own employees.
Whoa, wait a second. So my carefully written note helps the employer avoid an OSHA fine. But at the same time, if my clinic messes up sharps disposal, I could get fined by OSHA. And potentially, that bad practice could even cause an injury to my own staff, creating a workers' comp claim against my own practice.
That's precisely the situation. It's a real dual-edged sword.
Wow. That's some serious pressure. Dual liability defined right there.
It really is. The stakes are definitely high because you're both, a partner helping others comply, and you're a subject yourself open to inspection and fines.
Okay. The concept of dual liability is pretty clear now.
Yeah.
But let's shift from the why to the what. Let's get practical. If an OSHA inspector actually walks into a clinic, one that treats workers' comp injuries, what are they looking for? What's on their checklist?
Right, the requirements are actually surprisingly broad for any healthcare setting. We can start with the documentation piece we touched on, injury and illness documentation.
Yep.
As the provider, you've got to make sure your notes are really precise about causation, what caused the injury. They need to clearly spell out any work restrictions.
Like no lifting over 10 pounds.
Exactly, and specify the treatment dates accurately, because that information is basically the trigger for the employer needing to log the case on their OSHA forms.
Okay, so that's the external part, helping the employer.
Yeah.
What about protecting the clinic's own staff? The internal stuff.
Right, the internal side. Here, we really hit, I'd say, the big three. First is the bloodborne pathogen standard. This is absolutely fundamental.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Needles, bodily fluids.
Yep. OSHA demands a written exposure control plan. And it's not just write it once and forget it. It has to be reviewed and updated every year. Plus, mandatory staff training on it and ensuring everyone uses personal protective equipment, PPE, correctly. In a clinic setting, this is just non-negotiable. Second big one, hazard communication, or HAZCOM.
ASCOM. Okay.
Think about all the chemicals in a clinic. Cleaning agents, disinfectants, maybe lab chemicals.
Lots of sprays and wipes these days.
No, definitely. Every single one needs to be labeled correctly. The clinic has to maintain safety data sheets, the SDS, for every chemical, and they have to be easily accessible to staff.
Accessible meaning?
Meaning staff need to know where they are and be able to get to them quickly if needed, and of course training on how to read the SDS and handle the hazards.
That SDS binder sounds like the definition of really boring appliance work.
It absolutely is.
But I guess if you started using, say, 6 new kinds of disinfectants after COVID protocols kicked in, that binder just got thicker, didn't it?
It certainly should have. And the training records need to reflect that staff were trained on those new chemicals too. Which brings us to the third big internal requirement: needle stick safety and sharps disposal.
Okay.
OSHA is very specific here. They require what they call engineering controls, basically, using safer medical devices like safety syringes that have built-in protection.
The ones with the little covers that slide over.
Exactly. And crucially, they audit the training records for sharps safety, and they look at the actual sharps containers. Are they placed correctly? Are they overfilled? Are they the right type? This is an area where they often find really simple but pretty serious mistakes.
I get the bloodborne pathogen standard being critical. That's obvious. But does OSHA really expect a small PT clinic, maybe one that doesn't do invasive procedures, to have the same kind of complex respiratory protection program as, say, a big hospital OR that deals with aerosols constantly? Doesn't that seem like overkill sometimes?
That's a fair question. And the answer is, well, it's nuanced, but generally, if the procedures warrant it, then yes, even if it's minor. If your staff does anything that generates aerosols or exposes them to airborne hazards, you are technically required to have a written respiratory protection program. That includes fit testing for masks, training, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
And honestly, post-COVID, the general awareness and expectation around things like ventilation, infection control, reporting exposures, it all got heightened. Lessons learned from OSHA's temporary emergency standards for healthcare have kind of permanently raised the baseline for all medical settings, big or small.
That is, wow. That's a staggering amount of detail. It goes way, way beyond just, filling out a form saying someone needs therapy. This affects how you train your front desk staff, cleaning supplies you buy, even what kind of needles you order.
It touches almost every operational aspect.
Speaking of operations, let's maybe touch on the controversial bit.
Yeah.
The money, the fines. You've got 15 years doing this. You must have seen some painful mistakes.
Yeah.
What are the most common and maybe the most expensive ways clinics mess up when it comes to OSHA?
Oh, definitely. And the frustrating thing, often the biggest pitfalls are the ones that are, well, pretty easy to avoid with a little attention. Top of the list, unfortunately, is still incomplete documentation.
The provider notes again?
Yep. Those vague notes like, patient hurt back at work is useless for OSHA recordability. If the note fails to clearly link the injury to a work event, or if it's wishy-washy about when restrictions started or stopped, you're basically leaving the employer hanging, unable to properly fill out their Form 300.
And that's where the employer fines can start, right?
Yeah.
Because the provider didn't give them what they needed.
Exactly. The provider's lack of detail creates the employer's compliance problem. It seems like documentation is always the weak link in workers' comp, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, what else?
Next up is the classic: ignoring staff safety. It sounds bad, but it happens. There's such an intense and understandable focus on patient care
Right.
that sometimes the internal compliance stuff just falls by the wayside. Sharps containers get overfilled. Maybe that annual bloodborne pathogens training gets skipped just this once because things are busy.
And the records?
Ah, yes. Improper training records. This one gets clinics all the time. It's not always that they didn't do the training, although sometimes that happens. Often it's that they can't prove they did it.
No sign-in sheet.
Or the sign-in sheet is missing, or it's incomplete, or it's stuffed in a drawer somewhere nobody can find. If an OSHA inspector asks to see proof of last year's HAZCOM training and you can't produce a clear dated record, as far as they're concerned, it never happened. The fine follows.
That detail about the sign-in sheet.
Yeah.
It's not just doing it, it's proving you did it. the due diligence.
Precisely. Another big one is simply not keeping those written plans up to date. Remember, the exposure control plan needs an annual review. Well, if you bought new safety syringes this year, the plan needs to reflect that specific device. It can't still list the old model from 5 years ago. They check those details. But maybe the most fundamentally confusing mistake I see is mixing workers' comp and OSHA rules.
How do you mean?
Providers get tangled up. They confuse the employer's duty to report injuries to OSHA with their own rules about, say, medical billing codes or getting treatment authorized through utilization review.
Ah, okay. Apples and oranges.
Completely. You have to keep them separate in your mind. OSHA cares about workplace safety, preventing injuries, and documenting them correctly for tracking purposes. They genuinely could not care less if you use the right CPT code or if the claim was accepted. That's a different universe of rules.
There's a really important clarification.
Yeah.
Keeping the CPT codes mentally separate from the SDS binder. That's a necessary shift for any provider in this space.
Absolutely correct.
Okay, so we've talked about the problems, the risks, the complexities. Let's pivot to solutions. For the clinic owner or manager listening right now, maybe feeling a little anxious that their SDS binder is actually gathering dust. What's the action plan? What steps can they take, like today or this week, to get compliant?
Okay, let's build a practical checklist. First, thinking about the external part helping employers. Reporting alignment. Take a hard look at your standard medical report templates. Do they force you or prompt you to clearly address causation?
Like a required field.
Could be. Or just a standard section. Do they make you specify the functional restrictions clearly? And are the key dates, date of injury, date restrictions, start to end, always captured? Basically, audit your own forms to ensure they naturally gather the info OSHA needs employers to have. Second, turning inward. Exposure control. Make it someone's specific job, maybe the office manager, maybe a lead nurse, to own that written exposure control plan. Their responsibility is to review it, update it, and document that review every single year. It's an ongoing task.
Got it. Designate an owner. And the proof, documentation again.
Always. Which leads to number 3. Training legs are king. Seriously, keep meticulous records, make sure they're signed, dated, list the topic covered, who attended, store them somewhere accessible, maybe digitally and physically. Treat these logs like they're gold.
Right. Assume you'll be asked for them.
Exactly. 4th, do a HAZCOM audit. Literally walk through your clinic, check labels on everything chemical. Are they legible? Are they accurate? Then find your SDS collection. Are they all there? Are they current? Most importantly, does your staff know where to find them and how to use them?
Good point. Doesn't help if they're locked in your office.
Right. 5th, don't forget waste management. Are you using a certified service for your biohazard waste?
Should be, yeah.
Okay. But are you keeping the manifests, the disposal logs they give you? OSHA can, and sometimes does, ask to see proof of proper disposal. Keep those records. And finally, number 6. Leverage technology. You probably already have an EHR system, right?
Most practices do now.
Use it. Customize templates to prompt for those OSHA-relevant details we talked about: causation, restrictions, dates. Make it easy to capture the right info consistently. And there are compliance platforms out there now specifically designed to store training records, safety plans, SDS sheets digitally. Use the tools available.
That's fantastic. Really concrete, actionable advice. Sounds like a lot, but it's really about building systems, isn't it?
It is. And doing regular internal checks, little self-audits. Catch the small stuff, the expired disinfectant, the missing training signature before it becomes a big, expensive problem during an actual inspection.
It prevents the panic later.
Yeah, nobody throws a party for updating the SDS binder.
Right. Hey everyone, gather around. I just verified all the chemical labels are compliant.
Not exactly exciting stuff.
Agrees. Definitely not the glamorous side of medicine.
But man, when that OSHA inspector does show up unexpectedly, suddenly that boring, dusty, totally unsexy binder, it becomes maybe the most important document in the whole clinic. Instantly.
Yeah.
Priorities shift real fast when enforcement walks in the door.
So the big takeaway here for you, the listener, is this. If you treat workplace injuries, OSHA compliance isn't optional. It's absolutely non-negotiable. And it's because of that tricky dual role you play. You're helping employers meet their OSHA duties with your documentation. And you have a strict legal duty to protect your own team from hazards inside your own clinic walls under OSHA's rules.
That's the bottom line. By being thorough with your notes, consistent with your training, and crucially, by regularly checking your own safety practices, you do more than just avoid fines. You protect your staff better, you stay compliant, and ultimately you provide better care for those injured workers who rely on you.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. We talked about how a clinic's own safety protocols affect its staff. So consider this. What liability does a clinic potentially take on within the workers' comp system if it fails its own internal OSHA audit, creating an unsafe environment that then leads to one of its own employees getting injured and filing a claim against the practice? Think about that loop failing OSHA leading to a workers' comp claim against yourself. What are the ripples, financially and ethically? That's it for episode 314 of Workers' Comp Unwrapped. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Workers' Comp Unwrapped. If you found value in today's episode, subscribe and share with fellow doctors. Stay informed and keep making a difference in your patients' care.